So we wanted to start right out with asking you, you have made the bold statement that it is right to want state power, that state power in the hands of the right people and the right class is a great thing. And to wildly understate it, this is not how most people think about state power. Why is state power a great thing?
Well, you have to begin with what you referred to, in the hands of the right class of people, the right kind of state power based on the right kind of system. One reason why a lot of people may not think state power is so great is because they're living under the exercise of it by these monstrous oppressors. So the idea, the idea is promoted, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and all this bullshit from some British lord, So, people are, inclined to look at the way things are now and how power is exercised and have a hard time imagining it could be exercised in a different way by different people. And so the reason I say state power is a great thing is because in order to do all the things that we need to do to uproot all this oppression, you have to have power in society in order to do them. I mean, the reason we can't do them now is because the wrong people, that is a class of exploiters, the capitalist imperialists, have state power and use that state power to suppress any attempt at seriously uprooting all this oppression. So we need a different kind of state power, a socialist state power that, first of all, is radically different in terms of what it's based on, what it's aiming for, and also whom it involves in the exercise of state power. It's involving the masses of people increasingly in playing an initiating role and a conscious role in transforming society. And unlike the present system, socialist state power backs up the masses of people in moving to uproot all this oppression, while it also provides leadership to them to see what they're up against, what are the contradictions they have to break through on in order to uproot all this, and how to wage that struggle. So it's a completely different kind of state power. Any idea, just think about it, any idea that you were going to overthrow the existing system and then you're not going to have any state power, guess what happens? You are going to have state power. It's going to be the state power you just overthrew will be back in power in a quick minute. So the whole idea that you can do without a state, without state power, yes, you need a radically different kind of state power, but you need power to be able to lead masses of people and back them up in making all these transformations. What happens now when people go out? First of all, the state power, I'll just back up a second, will be radically different. You're not going to have a police force that murders people on a daily basis in order to maintain a system of oppression. The police forces, we will need police forces, we will need armed forces to defend the revolution. But these forces will be radically different. They will be the masses of people who have risen up to make the revolution in the first place. That's from whom the police and the armed forces will be drawn. And I've made the statement before. Some people say, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're going to take all these people out here running around right now, shooting each other and selling drugs, and you're going to give them state power?" I don't think so. I don't think I want to be part of that. No, we're not talking about people as they are now. We're talking about people. Go back with the question that Andy raised in a previous talk. Previous interview we were doing, people as they've been radically transformed, as they've radically transformed themselves on the basis of being struggled with in the course of transforming the world and making revolution. So then, the state power is going to be in the hands of masses of people who've been struggled with to be emancipators of humanity and to make a revolution on that basis. And, there's a lot of experience in the history of revolution, and particularly communist revolution, that we can draw from, that it is possible to transform people. Like when they made the revolution in China, for example, which took a different path, just to be clear, for anybody out there, just to be clear, was a revolution that in those particular circumstances was made by waging armed struggle from the very, very beginning. armed struggle from the beginning and throughout. That was the character of the Chinese Revolution because of the particular character of Chinese society and the conditions that they were dealing with. Our revolution is different. It's a period of carrying out the three prepares through political and ideological work and, yes, standing up and defending the people and fighting the power, but not attempting to wage an armed struggle until the conditions for that have been brought into being. That's where the three prepares come in. That's what we're working toward, but that's not what we're doing now. But there's still something to learn from the Chinese Revolution. When Mao started up the People's War in China, the armed struggle against the existing oppressive government and the imperialists who were behind it, the U.S. and Britain in particular, he said, I went to the brave elements, what we might call the brothers and sisters on the street, in our circumstances. He said, I went to them because they weren't afraid to die. But then a tremendous amount of struggle had to be waged. What's this about? What's this armed struggle for? This is not armed struggle to go out and rip off people. They had to have points of attention, to make sure that the people were adhering to the principles of the revolution and applying the principles of the revolution. Things like you don't take a needle or a thread from the masses of people. You don't go about, this was mainly a male army at that time, although the masses of women did become involved. You don't go abusing women. There are different principles here that had to do with the revolution that we're carrying out. And there was struggle, and that's why they had to have those points of discipline and points of attention. So we're talking about masses of people who've been transformed through struggle and transforming themselves in order to bring about the revolution we're talking about and bring into being the necessary state power. But that state power, once established, will be completely different, radically different. The role of state power and whether it really serves the revolution to emancipate the masses of people or whether it actually constitutes another oppressive force over the masses of people is determined by the content of that state power, by the line, the politics and ideology and program that it's based on and that is leading it. That's how you know, and that's how the masses of people can be led to evaluate what's the character of this state power. Is this state power that's standing above the mass of people and turning into an oppressive force that's going to actually restore the old system of exploitation and oppression? Or is this a state power by its content, by its actions, by the way it's being led, by what it's fighting for, by what's guiding it, is actually backing up and supporting the masses of people in emancipating themselves and supporting the revolution throughout the world toward the same goal of emancipation, uprooting and eliminating all antagonistic conflicts among people, all forms of oppression and exploitation. But that's why state power, yes, I want us to have state power, not the three of us sitting here, but the masses of people who've risen up to make a revolution so that they can carry through what they fought for in that revolution. And yes, so that they can actually back up the masses of people in carrying out those transformations and prevent anyone from actually overthrowing the system that exists and re-enslaving the masses of people. So, this is why state power, socialist state power, is a great thing to have. And it's something we should, everyone who wants to see a more just world should be hungering for this state power, not worrying about what it'll be like. Yeah, there needs to be a struggle over what it's going to be like, and that will be an ongoing struggle. But we should be primarily hungering for that state power because that's the power that will enable these transformations I'm talking about. Now, to be clear, since I said it will prevent people from overthrowing the socialist system, that doesn't mean that there won't be allowance for dissent. Doesn't mean that we don't need a lot of intellectual and cultural ferment. We do. That's all embodied in the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. Anyone who raises objections to what the government is doing or what the policies are, or even to the very existence of a socialist state, will be allowed to do so. And there will even be ways that criticism is encouraged and fostered and dissent because you need that. You need to know what your shortcomings are. And the masses of people need to thrash out what's right and wrong, what will really lead to on the road of emancipation, and what, even though it might say it's doing that, is actually leading back to the old way. So, there'll be a flourishing and even a promotion of dissent. By that I mean even in the, in the arts and the media and so on, provision made for people to have a vehicle to criticize and raise dissent, even while, people who try to violently overthrow the new socialist system will be prevented from doing so. Oh, well, you're just like the people in power now. That's what they say. You can dissent as long as you don't try to seriously challenge them. Well, no, we're not just like them. For one thing, they don't encourage and promote dissent. They limit dissent within a very narrow sphere. But second of all, once again, we're back to what's the nature, what's the character of that state power? And the reason we're not like them is because what the state power is for, what it concretely does, what it supports the masses of people in doing, what philosophy or ideology, what program, what politics, what social relations, it's all embodying and promoting, which are the complete and direct opposite of what exists under this system. So no, we're not just like them at all. We're radically different.
Hi, I'm Lenny Wolff. I'm a follower of Bob Avakian and a revolutionary communist, and I'm a member of the National Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour. And I'm talking here today with Michelle Shai, who's also a member of the tour, also a follower of BA, and a leader of the Los Angeles Revolution Club. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
Hi. We watched this clip that we just all watched together yesterday as well. I watched it earlier this week because I'd been thinking a lot about this and what a difference state power makes and how we have to be actually talking with people and saying to people, we have a whole better way that things could be done. And I just, we're doing this right after and in the wake of the police murder of Tyree Nichols that many of you watched and saw the brutal inhumanity that was visited upon somebody for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and who know that this goes on day after day, night after night in every city around the country. And I just wondered if you wanted to say anything in that relation as we get going into this, some of what BA talks about in this clip.
Every day, almost every day, just since the beginning of this year, just 2023, right? We opened up, greeted the new year with three, just here in Los Angeles, right? 3 people that were murdered by the LAPD, right? And then we see another one of a man without legs, thrown out of his wheelchair and then shot to death, and it brings to life how, if we had state power, as Bob Avakian says in that clip, we could do things in a radically different way that cannot be done under this system because of what these police actually enforce, right? So it makes you angry and continuing to be even angry about the fact that this is not going to stop, that people are dying at the hands of the police, and all these other things that we call the 5 stops, right? Under this system cannot be resolved unless we had state power. The oppression of women, the destruction of the environment, the wars for empire, the crisis of immigrants, flooding to the border, right? All of these things, cannot be resolved unless we actually have state power and can do things radically different.
Yeah, that is the important thing. Last week, I remember that Noche Diaz and Andy Z were talking about this murder of Tyree Nichols, and Noche brought up from Basics 124. This is Basics. It's the Handbook of Revolution of really, really critical quotes from Bob Avakian. Noche brought up the quote 124 that to the effect that the police do not serve and protect the people. They serve and protect relations of exploitation and oppression. And yesterday, when we were talking about the socialist state power that we're going to bring into being with revolution, we were talking about some of the differences it would make in things like housing and education. And I just wondered if there was any of that you wanted to bring to bear for the people watching.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, we were reading together, one quote from Basics, right? And it made me think about, even like the contrast, and something like education, right? I've talked about this story before, but just, in high school being, reading Shakespeare and having a really hard time understanding, right? And raising a question, I was kicked out of class and told that I was stupid and couldn't amount to anything and couldn't, and they didn't, instead of actually working together to understand, and learn, right? Something like Shakespeare and actually and a lot of the things that people are locked out of even being able to work with ideas under this society, that in a whole different, society and what's laid out in the Constitution, right? The education would be so different, where again, people would be able to work together to be able to understand these things, and not just to build up your own bank of knowledge, but to actually go to work on the problems of the society. We're going for the emancipation of all of humanity, bringing these youth and bringing, people together to go to work on, the whole of society, right? It's just so different, just in contrast. But again, you need state power to be able to do something like that.
The contrast, being kicked out of class for asking a question. What does that tell you about how much they want to foster critical thinking in this society, especially for Latina youth, for Black youth, for other oppressed youth? What does that tell you, that one example? And then what does it mean? We just have a piece in our on our website up this week that makes the point that the whole point of Bob Avakian's leadership is to develop critical thinkers, strategic people who can grapple with strategy, who can grapple with how the new society needs to be, what the foundations of that society need to be, what kind of people we need in a socialist society. There's so many examples. He talks in Basics, and there's discussion in the Constitution that B.A. wrote for the new Socialist Republic of North America about housing. And the situation today where there's huge skyscrapers, some of which are empty now, and then homeless people hounded and harassed for camping on the streets because they have no home and can't begin to afford somewhere to live. And in a socialist society, this is going to be totally different. And the police in this society, if you get evicted, if you're a single mother or a family, or you have 4 or 5 kids, and you can't make rent 1 or 2 months, the job of the police is to put you, your kids, and your stuff on the street, so that landlord can rent that out for a profit to somebody else. And I don't care if you had the so-called Prince of Peace himself wearing the uniform, he would still have to put that mother and that family on the street. And if they said anything, he would be driven to beat on their heads and put them in jail. And that's what it means to serve and protect the relations of this system. Whereas in a socialist system, it would be totally different. That's not what the job of the people's security would be. It would be to help people who are running into problems with their housing, to figure out a way to adjudicate things, to develop things, to solve problems, not to just beat on people, to crush the problem, to crush the people who are perceived as problems. What do people do, though? What do we do to get to that society? What would you tell people?
Well, we need to overthrow the existing state power, right? And in order to do that, we need revolution, right? That's what we're getting organized for, right? That's what, it's gonna, just think about what an actual revolution means, right? Meeting, defeating, dismantling, overthrowing the existing system and replacing it. That's gonna take millions of people. That's gonna take a serious force of, thousands that are gonna lead that, that have to, and that's part of what we're going to work on now, right? They're gonna have to break with a lot of shit. I had to break with a lot of shit, with religion, with with nationalism, right? This idea that like what I thought were quote unquote my people, right? When I came to actually understand, the situation of people in other parts of the world, that were suffering tremendously, and actually came and went deeper to like where was this coming from, and how those people, from Mexico, from Central America, were linked together with like the people in other parts like Africa that I was learning about, right? And came to actually see those are my people, and actually, really rupturing with this, right? With this nationalism and taking up the new communism, right? And these are things that people have to break with, because think about it, right? Something like religion as an example, right? Which I had to break with too. You're talking about, leading a revolution and leading millions, right? If you come up against obstacles, what are you going to turn to? You're not going to get down on your knees and start praying and, looking for something to drop down from heaven to save you. You have to go to the science. You have to actually, have a really firm scientific, grounding to be able to lead people through all the way to this society that we're talking about, right? To be able to lead that, right? So we in the Revolution Club have this slogan, fight the power and transform the people for revolution. That means people, really transforming, right? They're thinking, and as I said, letting go of this bullshit that stands in the way of actually being able to get to that society. No, we're not going to be, about revenge. No, we're not going to be about dogging women. No, we're not going to be about making jokes or derogatory shit towards like, people of different nationalities that speak different languages. This is all laid out in our points of attention for the revolution that we live for, that we live by, that we fight for, and that we struggle with each other to actually, take up. And again, that's part of transforming the thinking of people, right? And taking up this new communism and the leadership of Bob Avakian.
Wow, it's I thought that spoke a lot to some of that really, really critical point, this transforming the people now. I want to take one little part of this. I want to move over to one thing, though, on the fight the power, because I think right now, if I understand our audience and from people I've talked to and things I've observed, people aren't necessarily out in the streets as they were a few years ago around Tyree Nichols, but I know some of you are seething about this inside. Some of you are seeking out ways to talk about how this is making you so angry and so looking for some way to act. And I wondered if we should talk a little bit about some of what the orientation of the Revolution Club is towards these kinds of outrages.
Well, look, in Bob Avakian's work, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, which people should go and read, that's up on our website, revcom.us, he actually speaks to, just in terms of this, just the shit that people are caught up in, right? This thing of, instead of fighting and killing each other, what people need to be doing now is uniting to defend each other, opposing all unjust violence, not launching attacks on anyone, but at the same time, not allowing the police or civilian fascist thugs to wantonly brutalize and murder people. And people need to do this as part of building up the forces for revolution.
I think that's extremely important, what you just said, as something to work towards. I also want to bring in, though, in this situation in particular that we're living in right now, another thing BA has said, that there is no right for anyone, including police, to just murder someone. And there is a right and a responsibility to defend and protect people from unjust attacks on their rights and on their very lives. And we take that very seriously. And if you take that seriously, if this resonates with you, you need to be part of this Revolution Club. This is not something, when we talk about revolution, when Michelle talks about, this is not something off in the far distant reaches of time. The way this country is being pulled apart from top to bottom right now, the huge shocks and changes in people's lives. Last year at this time, there was no war in Ukraine. Last year at this time, women had the right all over this country to control their own bodies and to get an abortion if they wanted to. Last year at this time, there were actually wildfires sweeping across the planet, but that too has gotten far worse. People are being forced at this point to confront things they never thought they would have to confront in a situation in which those who rule us are no longer able to keep things together. This is a time, a rare time, that we could actually, in which revolution is more possible than it normally is. So, Michelle, do you have anything, final words you want to say to the people watching you?
Yeah. I mean, look, just think about this whole discussion and how radically different, we could live, right? And get with this revolution, because again, there's no stopping all of these horrors that, as you're talking about, right, get worsened by the day, It's on us to actually not squander this rare opportunity, right? And actually go to work to bring that time when we can actually bring this whole system down closer, right? And actually go bring this whole system down. And that means getting with this revolution. That means getting with the leadership of Bob Avakian, right? If you're in Los Angeles, if you're in New York City, if you're in Chicago, link up with your Revolution Club. If you're in the Bay Area, link up with the Revolution Club out there. If you're in New York in the Bay Area, link up with Revolution Books. If you're not in any of these cities, DM us, But most importantly, wherever you are, get into these BA interviews right away. Watch all 3 parts and spread them amongst everyone you know. Gather your family, your friends, watch them together, discuss it. Let us know how that goes. But look, there's no squandering. We can't squander this opportunity. People have to know that we don't have to live this way and that there is a force getting organized for revolution.